Hello and welcome to Chatgate Podcast, where we break down our review of a movie of my choosing, and just try to have a bit of fun as we do. I'm your host, Dranking Thomas Shoes.
Hi, I'm Hayden, and we watched Super Hentai.
James wasn't here. It's not hentai.
Oh,
You ditched us, remember?
oh yeah. So I did that in beforehand and scratched it off now. Okay, change that now. We watched Power Rangers.
I'm sorry, did you say you watched that beforehand?
Well, I thought that's what we were watching because that's what James said.
Well, James ditched us. We can't watch what he says when he ditches us.
I was confused. Okay,
Yes.
I was really confused. I
You
thought,
are.
okay, which one's real? So I just went with the one that had the boobies in it. I was confused.
So does it. Anyway, to be more specific though, Hayden, we are discussing Saban's Power Rangers. You have to put Saban on the front of it.
Okay, I'll forget that, but okay.
Yeah. Released in 2017 and serving as a much more serious adaptation of the hit TV series of the same name, which itself was an adaptation of the Japanese kids show Super Sentai. Not hentai, Hayden. Sentai.
Oh, Super Senpai, okay.
The movie was directed by Dean Israelite, whose only other movie credit is Project Almanac, which he directed 2 years prior to this. He's done some TV episodes here and there, but none I've actually seen or heard of, so I'm just going to skip that. But yeah, let's talk Power Rangers, because this is my wheelhouse, Hayden.
Yeah, this is his Ben 10. It's that one thing that he's constantly obsessed with and buys all the stuff for.
What do you mean obsessed with? What do you mean buys all the stuff for? What do you mean?
You could fucking you could literally make presents for the entirety of Japan with all the shit you've brought.
Anyway, let's actually give some early thoughts, without going to writing. And so obviously when this film first obviously we started coming out the trailers, obviously the advertisement, which was the end of, I think it was the end of 2016, the trailers, and that started coming out for this. Obviously they started doing the promotion and whatnot. And I was really hyped for it. I was really looking forward to it. It looked interesting. It looked different. It looked, obviously, as you say, it looked more serious. I was like, okay, I'm going to dig this. I'm going to dig this. And obviously, it came out in March 2017, I believe it was, in the UK. I think this came out literally a month before I started working full time. And I was like, I'm definitely going to watch this. And I dragged James along. Well, I didn't drag him. He was like, oh, I want to go and watch that. I was like, let's go and watch it then.
Watch it then.
We tried to drag him on for this, and
Yeah, it was a shame, really, because he had so much to live for.
That made me laugh. But yeah, obviously we went and watched it and went in there. There wasn't many people in there because, again, this film is one that didn't make enough money. I think it literally made exactly the amount it cost to actually make the movie itself, not advertisement, just obviously the movie itself. That's why there's no sequel at all in development, apart from a remake with a different studio. But obviously wasn't that many people in there. I think there's like 2 or 3 kids. This was like 11 a.m. showing them on a Friday morning, I think it was. So there's like a couple of kids in there, and obviously some grown-ups here and there. Obviously people are always grown up with it. As you say, this is definitely something that's more for people that have grown up with it rather than kids, because obviously that's certain, cow moment early on, if you know what I mean. But obviously it went for it, sat all the way through it, and I really enjoyed it. I do have my issues with it, which I'll point out at the time, and I know you have your issues with certain parts of it as well.
Yeah,
I think our issues are quite similar at times. But as for someone who grew up with the franchise, for someone who adored the franchise, still watches the franchise today, and watches the fucking Japanese rendition, this is the first thing I picked up. It's a
Rubik's Cube.
The Minecraft cube. It's a little eagle. It's legal.
It's a very fat eagle, but okay.
It's the body. It's the body. The Zord. But yeah, basically, for someone who's grew up with it and whatnot, I've really enjoyed it. I thought I did that the wrong way around. I had a lot of fun watching it. Obviously, it's a lot darker than the show, which proven I showed you a few episodes yesterday. But I kind of dig it. I don't know where the head is. The head's over there somewhere, but basically it's there.
Hmm.
The head, the head's somewhere. I don't know where I put the head, but yeah, for someone who grew up with this, I really enjoyed it. Had a lot of fun.
Definitely. I mean, I think personally this is the best way they could have done it. There are things that I would change, obviously, as we'll get onto that later. But like for the tone specifically, and the way the cast and the way they've done stuff, I think it was the best way they could have done, because it could have fallen into that trap of being another generic kids film adaptation, and it would just been a bit bland, really. But I think the way they did it, it adds a different type of life to it. And as I said, it's definitely something for those who grew up with it, not for kids who want to go into who've obviously been watching right now, currently watching the new stuff, because it's going to be extremely different. And
I
it's
believe at the time in 2017, it would have been. I think it would have been Ninja Steel.
yeah.
No,
Yeah,
go on, Karen. I'll try and think.
because because obviously because it's the original like Rangers, the actual original Mighty Morphin ones, it makes sense it being for adults, not for kids. And that's what I liked about it, because there was definitely, it was still kind of like a bit like Marvel, right? Kids can still watch it, but there were some a lot more obvious adult jokes. But we get that in Marvel. Yeah, many fucking times they've swore in it. You got Sam Jackson, you got to get him saying motherfucker. So yeah, I think it was the best way they could have done it without ruining. It still has that Power Ranger feel to it, but it's more modern and it's just more
Yeah.
adult, really.
Yeah, I quickly googled it
Yeah,
because I was like, wait. Obviously, this film when as I said, when it started advertising, it was like back in 2016 when I was working at Smith. So obviously, I was around the toys when the toys for this film came out, and I remember obviously the toy line they had then for the Nen series. It was Dino Supercharge at the time.
yeah.
Ninja Steel was the end of 2017. So when this film came out, it would have been like very early on Dino Supercharge, up to the second series of the Dino Charge ones. So that was the one that was at the time, and obviously it's completely different to that. Obviously, they say all these shows. The only exception in terms of non-kiddie ones was probably the Disney era, because the Disney era
Yeah.
was dark as hell at times. Specifically RPM, for the fact that it was machines that created there's like a massive virus that wiped out the entire world, and robots now rule the world, and the last remaining humans are trapped inside a dome. That level of darkness.
Mm.
It's probably the most dark the series ever gone. And then this happened, so it went even darker.
Definitely. I mean, with like, I like how it's dark. Like as I keep saying, it's not for kids. But people obviously came into it thinking it'll just be a light-hearted kids film, and it would be exactly the same as.
I don't know why though, because it's a
Yeah,
12A.
it showed that it wouldn't be like that. But some people, they just see the words Power Rangers and think it's going to be all kiddie and cheesy, and not what it is. Which is
12?
obviously a realistic. What if Power Rangers did exist? They'd probably be like this, like with sleeker, obvious armor instead of you know the bullshit with big
Spandex.
weird the spandexy kind of ones you see
Or
in.
leather, I believe it was in Beast Morphers. They went with leather in
Mm,
that one. It's the first series not to have spandex. They went with leather. And then you got
makes
the current Japanese series Zenkaija, which
sense.
they're apart from the main guy who's in spandex, the rest are all robots. So their outfit is literally robotic like armor.
Mm,
So big clunky plastic, yep, not metal, plastic.
yeah,
So metal, yeah, definitely metal armor. Obviously,
definitely
Beast was the
metal.
first one that went with the leather, but obviously this one for, as you say, a straight up full on armor.
Yeah,
That's
and mm, it looks alien, which I like. The stuff looks alien, but like if at the time I've mentioned them, it was the aliens landed in during like one like was it the
Cretaceous, was it?
Cretaceous era? I think Cretaceous era. Yeah,
Yeah.
because of that era, and that's when obviously dinosaurs existed. Even though some doesn't make sense because the saber-tooth and the Matodon wouldn't have
But
existed then.
blame the Japanese counterpart for
But
doing that
yeah,
rendition.
we'll blame that as because of the source material, not the film. But
That basically sums up the franchise, though, that they have to
yeah,
obviously work off the source material. Though now they are doing a lot more refilming and reshooting new stuff, like the suited scenes, but obviously back pretty much up until, well, pretty much most times you see them in like the armor or in the show whatsoever, that was all just straight up just taking the Japanese version,
yeah.
literally.
As you showed us, like one of them, the original series.
The yellow one, it was a
Yeah, the
dude.
Yellow Ranger is a bloke in the Japanese, but a girl in the American one. So they obviously had to. Kids wouldn't have recognized it, but
Yeah.
in the moment, like as we know older and you know this stuff, it becomes more obvious.
So
And
that's it.
it's why all the villains tend to have masks on because obviously it's very hard to dub them because sometimes you can tell there's dub like with the non-masked villains, the woman, you can tell it's dubbed. There's like a slight bit delay
Delay.
to it. Yeah, there's like delay for the words and the mouth, but
See,
it's still hard for kids to recognize. I think.
yeah, that's one thing I don't get. Obviously, with this film as well. Obviously, as I said, I was working at a toy shop when all the stuff came out for this film, like the Megazords, the weird fucking
Mm.
fucking Halo sword, whatever you want to fucking call it. And you saw that's the word.
Yeah,
But there's one thing that really stuck in my mind, which was just like, why the fuck did they make it? They didn't even use it in the movie. They literally had a Morpher toy for this. It was a big fucking clunky ass piece of shit. It looked
yeah,
dreadful. It was massive. Basically, tried to make like a replica of the original, but bigger and more alien-like than obviously the toy was. I don't have an example of the original because I sadly don't own one. But they tried to replicate that, and obviously you put these weird discs in, which basically meant to be the gems, the coins,
yeah.
whatsoever, and that you put it in, it would light up like the whatever is in there. So the T Rex, you'd see like an outline of the T Rex in there, for example. And
Mm.
I don't know why they made it. It wasn't part of this movie. They never really explain fully how they morph. They just like can just go, oh yeah, just say it's morphing time. Step on there. Can you do it out of there? I know he did it, but it's never explained how he did it out of there.
I think when they were standing inside, it was because he wanted them to resurrect him, didn't they? He wanted them to resurrect him. I mean, that's what that was doing. That was there to help resurrect him. But I think they could probably do it naturally, anyways, because of their coin, maybe. And it's
Yeah,
like but if we do it there, maybe it's like the energy gets released and blah blah blah. He becomes alive again.
yeah, it's just never fully delved into explaining
Yeah.
how they can full on just get this on. Obviously, as you say, it is based on the coin. It's literally the coin's probably causing it all. But I mean, it's never fully explained stuff.
Why?
Yeah, it's never really explained why Billy randomly did it when he's trying to stop them. Obviously, you can probably
Yeah.
guess that it was a self defense mechanism trying to stop them, but
Yeah.
it's something that's not explained, which is obviously something that drags it slightly down for me. There's a few things not
Mm.
explained, which may have been explained in sequels, but
Yeah. That's probably like they probably would have got explained, but because some people took it as face value and was like, "This isn't what I want, so I'm not going to go to it." It sort of ruined any chance of getting sequels.
and then Saban sold the rights. Hasbro owns the rights now.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's
Yeah.
actually move on then to the opening sequence because we've gave a lot of talk there, and half it wasn't even about early ratings. So yeah, so obviously the opening sequence is Zordon burying the coins and all the old Rangers dying, even though you only see the yellow one dying. As Rita basically killed them all, and then the asteroid comes because Zordon killed the Rita and himself.
Yeah.
I like the opening sequence. It sort of sums up the different tonage of the movie. It reminds me,
Yeah.
it's like of that fan film. There's a fan film that's really dark, like really fucking dark.
Mm.
And that had this sort of brutal, sort of like warlike setting for the opening, which is kind of like this. Obviously, but this is obviously during the dinosaur era. The fact there's pterodactyls flying around and whatnot.
Mm.
And I really liked it because obviously you get to see fucking Bryan Cranston not stuck in a war. You get to see him actually in full like body paint and everything,
Mm.
spouting off his Obviously, you get to see him in the armor as well, which is quite cool. And you get to see him that language they speak. They made that up. Obviously, him and the one who played Rita, they literally made that
Yeah.
language up. From what I remember reading from an interview they did, they're like, "Oh yeah, we made that up. It's just like backwards and shit. We just like merged loads of languages into one." It was like we just spent ages working on it. And obviously, you get to see Rita fully armored up in her green Ranger armor,
Yeah,
and that was cool. I really dug the opening, and it sort of set up the dark tone that the rest of the movie was going to take. So, thumbs up from me.
definitely. It was a very intriguing. It shows you that it's not going to be this like cheesy, light-hearted like film. Straight away, you know it's going to be dark. It's going to be quite unique, really, because we don't expect this from a Power Ranger film, which what I liked a lot. Cause I grew up on Power Rangers, like watching Wild Force, but now I watched. You showed us some stuff before we watched it, and it's kind of hard to watch the cheesiness now because now we're all a lot older. But back then, obviously, as a kid, you kind of glance over the cheesiness and the obvious, like what the fuck's going on. But I think if the film was like that, it would have took us out of it, and we'd be like, oh, "This is really what we're watching." But because it was so different, and so big and more adult, it just worked. It's like one of my favourite like CBBC shows was Young Dracula because that was a kid show, but was very like dark and
Borderline.
yeah, like they literally had the people die in that show because he's about vampires, of course, that too. But it was like especially the older series, but when he was like 17, 18, they dealt with like infidelity and basically blood purity and sexism and all this kind of stuff for a kids show. And I've always liked those kind of ones, the ones that blatantly aren't for kids, but what on kids stuff, which is what this film does, and I like.
Okay. That sums up the opening sequence, and obviously, I like the fact as well. It doesn't have this like. If you look at some like films and whatnot, as soon as obviously it then fades into the actual movie, but I mean the bit in between it comes up with Power Rangers, but it doesn't like just blam it straight on the screen like it could have. Like the older movie did, for example, in the 90s, it obviously had lightning striking and it had the Power Rangers logo appear, but this one, it's like a subtle, appearance on the bottom right hand corner before it just fades away and then goes to the whole wanky moment. But yeah, we'll talk about that a bit more probably later on.
Definitely.
We'll talk about the casting characters of this movie. So, obviously, first off is the leader of the Power Rangers, Jason Scott, the Red Ranger, who's played by Dacre Montgomery, who obviously made big in this industry thanks to Stranger Things, and he plays a really good leader. Yeah, obviously, they all feel rebellious at times. Obviously, he is straight up rebellious because the whole kidnapping a ball, which someone wanky off, and obviously he has a fucking ankle monitor around his fucking leg. That shows how dog he is when the fucking main character has got a fucking obviously ankle monitor around his leg.
The main good guy.
He really sold for me as well his emotions, especially towards the end when obviously what happened with Billy. He sold that sadness that was inside him that he knew it was all his fault. He wanted to blame himself for everything and whatnot, and I really enjoyed his performance in this movie.
Definitely, because like I think one thing I really like about this film is it's a very character-heavy film, which is like would have thought a free kitchen they would have like not gone for that. I mean, this entire film has like obviously a juvenile delinquent, massive quotation marks, obviously with the ankle on it. So you got someone who's dealing with like bullying and dealing with exposing nudes and stuff. Someone dealing with like their sexuality in their family. Someone dealing with autism, and then we got the woman dealing with a dying mum. And like these are very like heavy hitting topics. And you would have thought like I like how they didn't shy away from that. like this is real life. Let's make these characters real, and they did really good with it. I think, especially the kids. I like what they do with the cast, but I also like how even like the big man in the wall. I don't know his name.
Zordon.
Zordon, yeah. I even like how he's not all perfect. He's got his own like
Agenda.
yeah. He wants to come back alive, but even he has his own character arc where he sacrifices that to let Billy like come back, and oh, he's very character heavy, but even though that does sacrifice some of the action, I personally think it's worth it. But other people might disagree. It's how they see the film. Like I think it didn't need. I think it didn't really need that much action when you got this.
I think it needed a little bit more than it did. I think that's one thing. It
Mm,
takes a bit too long to get into the action, which is obviously a lot of
yeah.
issues there.
Mm,
Don't get me wrong. I feel like I do agree with the whole character-driven stuff, but I still
mm,
feel like they could have added a little bit more than the middle point of the movie, just a little bit more. Though they have the
mm,
little montage, the hand clap montage and whatnot, the fight, training and whatnot. I do feel like they could have. I said to you after watching, they could have had like a moment where
yeah.
they lose a fight early on, which is what sends them into the pit ready to fight, not just like, oh, try and morph. Oh, they can't morph. Okay, get to the pit. I feel like they could have had the fight and then try to do the morphing and then being sent to the pit. So I feel like there could have been something a bit extra there, but I do agree. The character-driven moments are a lot the stronger points of this movie.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, but that bit of action probably would have helped it for other people as well. Because I know people probably complain about the lack of action and the lack of like similarities to the original show, but I think it was done well. I don't really see what people complain about, but those people complained about Dora, so fuck them.
Anyway, moving on. Our next character is Kimberly Hart, the Pink
Hmm.
Ranger, played by Naomi Scott, who rose to fame after this thanks to Aladdin.
Hmm.
And obviously she's the one that deals with the nude sending and whatnot. And she out of all of them, she is full on the rebellious team for the fact that she cuts her hair and everything. And though obviously the Yellow Ranger is obviously rebellious and whatnot, obviously she doesn't cut her hair randomly out of anger for obviously her past life. Obviously, cutting the hair obviously was a symbol of getting rid of the past. This is the future, and I really enjoyed the performance. I thought she was another solid one, which I'm going to keep
Yeah.
saying through most of these characters.
I definitely agree. I mean, she was pretty obvious. Like they were setting up, obviously, her and Red Ranger to be the love interest, but they didn't go for the cliche of having them like obviously be. It's more that it was quite subtle.
Well, because
Uh,
they cut out the kiss. That's why.
yeah, they cut out the obvious bits, but even if they didn't, like, it wasn't as like blatant, but you could still see it happening. Like it was a natural progression, and I think she did. She definitely did good in a role. I enjoyed her in that because obviously, like, there's that moment where she didn't actually want to talk about why she was like in detention, but obviously you can tell she wanted to, but like was too scared to. Obviously, the whole point was she felt obviously guilty for what she did and was struggling to accept it. And another thing I like about it is obviously they aren't like all perfect, like Captain Americas. All of them have their troubles and what makes they all like have the moments where they've done something quite bad, but it's they don't let them let that affect them. So yeah, they did. She did pretty good, and I like her performance. As I said, good. Yeah.
Okay. Next up is Billy Cranston, the Blue Ranger. He's played by RJ Cyler, who most recently was in the Scream TV series, the third series of that, which never got released over the UK, sadly. And from what I read, he was good in that. and he's good in this because, as you say, he's the one that's dealing obviously the disability and the bullying essentially,
Mm-hmm.
and he's the one that's there to make obviously be the comic relief at times of the movie, but also be the heart and soul, as we stated yesterday, of the film, because he's essentially the one that brings them all together and allows them to be this unit to save the day. So I really enjoyed those two sides of him. I think he handled and juggled them both well into this character.
Agreed, definitely. He was by far my favourite.
And unlike Billy in the actual show, who was a straight up nerdy kid, he has his moments, but he's not full nerd. So obviously that's another different take on it there.
It's like he's not like sniveling nerd with the glasses and the obvious cliche. He's got that. It's more like it's autism that makes him smart. It's not easy nerdy. Just it's how he sees the world. And I like that distinction of it's not his fault he's like this, but he doesn't let it like stop him. He helps him because obviously he works out where the entire fucking crystal is, and like that. Even though like he knew all this stuff, he cared so much about like the team and stuff that he wanted them to be safe and not to give up where it is. Which, obviously, if they went for like the cliche of people depict autism, it could have been like really cringy and quite harmful. But they did it. They handled it really well. I think he did good with his performance, and it definitely made like the whole character bits that much better. I think. Yeah.
Agreed. Hands down, he's one of the standouts of this movie, and obviously this is what brought him to the scene, really. Okay, so next up is Zach Taylor, our Black Ranger, who's played by Ludi Lin, who we last saw in the Aquaman movie as Toilet Guy. And he's now next going to be, well, actually, it comes out on this day. It literally comes out on this podcast release date. He's going to be in the Mortal Kombat movie. Literally, it comes out the exact same day this podcast comes out. I'm so looking forward to that.
How do you feel, James, having Toilet Guy be so big in this? Oh, wait, you're not here.
And obviously, he's the one that's dealing with the dying mom, the sick mom. And obviously, he's essentially, out of all of them, he's got the most to lose. She's his whole life. She is all he has. He literally lives in a mobile home, and he straight up, when obviously they did essentially the Suicide Squad bar scene where they're giving like a little bit of information about themselves and whatnot. He's the one who straight up admits, like, yeah, my mom's sick, and I'm really afraid sometimes even being in there with her because I don't think she's going to make it. And I really liked his performance. I thought he gave a lot, and he makes you feel like it's real. He literally makes you feel like this kid is essentially dealing with this massive, massive tragedy that's really affecting him, which is obviously why he doesn't get to school a lot, which is why he's an outcast, which is why he's just by himself all the time. So I really dug his performance. It was a really solid showing of this, essentially, let's say, someone who's got everything to lose and he's pretty much losing it.
And you can tell that he felt so alone because he was the first one who wanted to like talk about all this stuff. He obviously wanted someone to like pour his heart to. So when they're all like standing around the fire, he drives the conversation towards that because obviously it's something that's been bugging him. And I liked what he did. Like I think the entire cast is, especially the Power Rangers themselves, they were perfect. I think and they all give that believable performance. So yeah, well done to Toilet Guy.
Plus, I think as well, obviously, as well as this, he's another one that has this really serious side to him. But he also does bring a bit of comedy at times. Like the scene when they're in the water and he's like, oh, I'm black. And obviously Billy's like, no, you're not. He goes, I am. Obviously, that's humorous. And obviously, him constantly going after Trini all the time. That's quite funny at times. And when he steals the fucking Mastodon and just drives it round and just almost kills that bunch of nuns. Also funny. But I'd say he's another solid member of this team, which pretty much every one of these says we're going to say.
Definitely.
Obviously, lastly, at the Rangers, we have Trini, the Yellow Ranger. I can't remember her last name. I don't know if it's. I think it might be different in this compared to the OG one. But yeah, she's obviously the Yellow Ranger. So she played by Becky G, who's more of a singer.
Hmm.
And the other film she was in, which was an even more disaster than this film when it came out, was a film called AXL, which is about a robot dog. And
Robot dog.
yeah, and obviously she's the one who's dealing with the sexuality side of it, because obviously she, technically speaking, is the first like on-screen sort of, I believe, memory reading. She's like the first
Yeah.
on-screen sort of a gay superhero.
Yeah.
And obviously because it was just, it's not pointed out till quite late on the film when obviously Zach's talking to her and he's like, "Oh, you got boyfriend troubles?" And she's like, "Yeah, something like that." And he's like,
And he
"Girlfriend
recognises
troubles?"
me.
And
Mm,
she nods, obviously, because obviously she's straight up a lesbian in this.
mm,
And that's another thing that's completely different from the source, obviously, what it's based upon, which is another
yeah.
nice little change, because obviously it brings it more into the modern times. Because
Yeah.
obviously, most groups, there's always obviously these different sort of aspects within like the traits of people.
Mm,
You're the prime example there, Hayden.
yeah. Hmm.
And Alex, weirdly.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
James. No.
Or is he?
But yeah, obviously she's, though obviously, basically she is the, obviously though I said the Black Ranger is an outsider, which he is, she is the full-on outsider. She's the one who wants nothing to
Yeah.
do with anyone whatsoever. She just stands on like a rock,
Yeah.
doing some like weird yoga pose while listening to really heavy rock music.
But I think that, like, obviously, they showed that obviously in the film by having like the main bad girl, the Green Ranger, massive quotation marks. She obviously goes to her saying like,
Because she's the outsider.
"Being you and I are not so different," or Green Goblin style.
Go for the heart.
Yeah, they they used to like show that they're the same, but she chooses them over like her own like safety. Show that even though she might be hiding herself from her family and everyone, she still wants to have like a connection with people. So I think that's what all of them have, that kind of. They all feel like they're outsiders, but they all want somebody. They want to be in some kind of team. And obviously, when the day they find those little coins, they will see as their best moment in their life, because when they actually feel like they've got a family. Oh,
Agreed. Agreed.
good.
As you say, all of the ones we've stated are excellent in this
Yeah.
movie. Perfect choices for the roles, and
Hmm.
it's a shame we're not going to get to see any more of them as this team.
I know. Yeah.
Okay, obviously there's three more main sort of stables to this movie left. So obviously first up is the villain, which is Rita
Yeah.
Repulsa, played by Elizabeth Banks, who is in Hayden's favourite movie of all time, the Lego Movie. And obviously, this is another character that was drastically changed from the both source materials essentially. Not just obviously how she is, but I mean the look. Obviously, as shown in when I showed you the one episode yesterday. Obviously, the old one's like this in this brown, like big outfit dress sort of thing. Whereas in this one's more in like a sleek armor sort of thing. Obviously, it's very more over sexualized, which I stated. Obviously, that is more of a design case of it's based on her old Ranger armor, but it's obviously all broken. Like essentially, she is, because she's the one that broke up the team. She's the one that destroyed everything. So it kind of makes sense. And obviously, she carries around this giant scepter with obviously the Green Ranger coin in, which would have gone to Tommy in the sequel, but again, sadly not happening. But yeah, I think she gives a very convincing performance as a villain. She is very villainous, and for the fact that she's not like scared of like killing kids, I'll give her credit.
Yeah, definitely. She was quite fun to like as a villain. She was a bit cliche, but
Yeah,
I also liked how she was like very over top crazy.
yeah. That's
After that,
kind. To be fair, that's kind of like the source material, though. They kind of keep that aspect because obviously Rita in the source material is quite crazy at times. The fact that the one I showed you yesterday, the ending, she's like, "Oh, I got a headache" because she lost. She's like, he's quite loopy. And again, she married Lord Zed, of course, she's fucking loopy. You've seen the guy. He literally is just skin. Not skin, like muscle, pure muscle. I don't mean like hench muscle, I mean like under the skin type muscle.
So he's not like fucking Ted Cruz.
No, he's not like Terry Crews, like buff as
Terry Crews,
fuck. He's
yeah.
more like if you had no skin.
I know, because there's like in My Hero Academia, there is a character that's literally like that.
Yeah.
He's just the outside muscle.
Yeah, he's basically really for a kids show, very scary looking, which is obviously a good thing. Which is another thing that's upsetting because obviously that probably would have been in one of the sequels, him turning up with his massive Z scepter.
Yeah,
So,
it would have looked very.
Yeah, I would love to have seen how they would have adapted that into this because yeah, as we said, that could have been really fucking horrifying if it was done right. Hopefully, it wouldn't have been done like Goldar, but we'll talk about that later.
Sensing a bit of, I like it.
But yeah, it's very cliche, but as I said, the over the top gives her that edge, and that's how unstable she can be at sometimes.
Yeah,
and I do like the fact that early on she's like this essentially like bone, essentially, and then she slowly becomes like actual Rita at the end. So I like that progression throughout the movie. So I'll give them that credit. Okay, so next up is the head in the wall, as Hayden likes to call him. The Zordon, who's gone from that little glass dome, which basically when he's a Teletubbies baby in the sun type head, to an actual movable head that goes around like a wall, which is quite cool. He's voiced and physically portrayed in the form of the face or the opening by Bryan Cranston. A favourite of mine and Hayden's, thanks to Godzilla last year. And I forgot what I said for him in that, so I'm just going to say he was in Malcolm in the Middle because he was the dad in Malcolm in the Middle. And I'm saying that because of the fact that it was recently brought up again in One Division when he broke that fucking house stand thing and it fell on top of him. I really it's a tough task for me to replace the Zordon of the old ones because it's iconic. His sort of voice and the look of him is really iconic. Though it is dated really badly now. It's still that iconic sort of remembrance and look. A bit like Alpha, which we'll get to as well. Their looks are really iconic, and if you show an image of someone now, go, oh yeah, I know who that is. So it's a tough task to replicate that into this, but I feel like they did the right choice choosing Bryan Cranston because he's a well-known face thanks to Breaking Bad and Godzilla and many other things, and he's a great actor, which though obviously he basically has to get the lines across. He doesn't even. That's the thing with actors. Obviously, a lot of times their facial reactions that sell a lot of the stuff they say and do, whereas he can't really sell that because obviously what he is like this moving wall. So you can't really sell the emotion on his face at times.
It's his voice.
It's literally just his voice. And I think Bryan Cranston did really good.
Definitely. I think he did a pretty good depiction of the character. Specifically because, like I said, you can tell he had an agenda. He was hiding something from them. You could tell it while watching, but it was very subtle. You didn't know what it was. But you knew that he was lying to them. And obviously the whole reveal that is because he wants to use them to basically come back to life. And it makes the character feel more real. Because if you died, you'd want to come back to life, right? You'd pretty much do everything you could to come back alive. And I think they did pretty well.
Yeah, and the thing is as well, we've obviously, the only person I think could pull off this Zordon-esque because he's bald, Patrick Stewart. Imagine that in the walls, that really British Captain's log, stardate.
Get out of my head, Charles.
But yeah, I really like Bryan Cranston in this movie. He's he's another one of the cast that just drags me into this movie. So obviously, lastly is another voice role. This one you don't see a face at all. This is Alpha 5, another iconic look from the show, which is hard to replicate, but I think they did a good job in this. And he's voiced by Bill Hader, who's a very good comedic actor, who's in It Chapter 2.
Yeah.
And again, he's one of the ones that brings the comedy value into this movie, because obviously when he comes into it, he's like this little tiny, even shorter than the classic sort of alpha. Though he does the obviously he's a lot shorter. He comes in, he makes that impact instantly, and he makes that comedy value when he takes out fucking Zach when he throws him away. He's like, wait, there's 5 of you, 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh yeah, he stretches his arm really far. He's like, got ya, pulls him back. He instantly brings that, but I like the fact as well that he knows when to go serious. Like when Zordon's trying to come out, he's there just like trying to get him to come out really quick. He's like, come on, get at the wall, your time's now. Or when Billy's dead and he walks in, he's just like, Master Billy. He's like, has that emotional tone of him. Again, another thing, just like Bryan Cranston in The War, he can't show his facial reactions. He literally has to use his voice to get that humour across, to get the obviously the serious and tone across, get the normal voice. He has to do that all the time, and I think he does it perfectly.
Definitely, he did a really good job of it. Because obviously, you got to sell this stuff. Like, if they didn't do that, it would have felt like wrong. Like, if he was just monotone, it wouldn't have sold the fact that, oh yeah, he wants his master to survive. Because obviously, he's trapped in this thing, and you've got to have them sell that. But also, you've got to have them, like, start caring for the team as well, which they do really well. So, yeah,
Agreed.
I think all of them have done a really good job.
Agreed.
All the characters are not what let it down. It's other stuff.
Basically.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll move on to the story of the movie. So the story, according to this is straight from IMDb, a group of high school students who are infused with unique superpowers harness the ability in order to save the world. Obviously, it's the most generic sort of plot ever,
Yeah.
but it's basically straight up the rip from the OG one. Apart from the fact that they weren't fully chosen like in that one, because you just have to watch the opening sequence of the original shows of Alpha Reese escaped. Recruited teenagers with attitude. Just steal these teenagers right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There you go, stole them. This is more realistic in the sense that it's people that find something in the ground and like it adapts to them, and then they find the actual thing by mistake. Realistically, they find the water by mistake because Billy just falls in when they're all jumping and doing that weird leg jumping thing. And obviously, though it's generic, I think it works really well.
Definitely. It's a simple plot, but it does more. Like, you don't really need to be like that extravagant for what you need, which is obviously the characters. They're what's more important in the film. And if that is a big extravagant plot, it would have taken away from that. So I think they did the right choice of making it pretty simple.
Yeah, basically just replicating and update. Essentially, all they did was replicate and update the original plot, basically.
Yeah.
So I like the fact they stuck to that. They knew that was what worked, and they was like, okay, let's stick to that, update it, make it more realistic and a bit more darker. There you go, simple. It's essentially like any sort of superhero movie. Every superhero movie is always a generic, simplistic idea. That's all it is. But yet, it's obviously everything within that idea, the acting, the fighting, the music, all that sort of stuff is what makes it iconic. Like Marvel and DC movies and just any sort of superhero movies out there, they're simple as fuck half the times. Just go back in time. Yeah, it's try and bring everyone back. That's a simple plot. I ain't getting in there, but it's done really well to get that, which is what this for me is.
People come for the characters, really, not for the plot. They want to see their favorite characters on screen doing these things.
Exactly.
Mm.
Exactly. Okay, so we'll move on then to the cinematography, and obviously it's a lot darker in terms of the cinematography at times, like how it's done.
Yeah.
And I think it has got some really good shots. I think there's some really good shots in this movie, and like any movie, there's you bad ones here on occasion, but I like a lot of the shots within it. There's a simple shot which I really like is the end credit one when it's going down the hall, and it's like really silent, and there's the teacher, whatever, is shouting one person's name, and then the fucking locker just blows up. I like that shot. I thought it was a really cool shot. a lot. A lot of times it is sort of basic, sort of like just pan around this, zoom in there, what bigger version of it here, like, stuff like that. But it's still effective, I think.
Definitely. It's there are some shots to be quite really good, like specifically when the Megazord obviously comes out from the pit.
Yeah, and it sort of
Fire
comes
pit.
up.
Mm. And even like the scenes when they're jumping over the cliff.
Yeah, when his legs are just weirdly flying in the
Yeah.
air.
Like some of those can be really fucking fun.
Yeah, I like the shot though when they come out, when they first finally morph, when they come out, it's all the lights flashing and then they start walking out like, all as a team.
Yeah.
I really like that shot. I think that was like the final shot of the fucking trailer, like just to get everyone hyped for it. Like, one
Yeah.
of the sort of final shots of it.
Mm.
And obviously there's that other shot, the shot with the mastodon when it's shit when it comes up the second time when he does it on purpose, not just like steals it. Like when he comes up and starts shooting, everyone's there jumping over the bullets. And it's like a zoomed out shot. It's not zoomed in. It's zoomed out as it's just wrecking through all these fucking putty or stone. What I don't even know what you want to call them, because obviously in the cartoon, the actual show, they're obviously clay, the putty, whereas it's the rock, so they're not really putty.
More realistic, basically.
I can't think of what you'd call them.
Fundamentals.
Let's just call them putty. If you left it out too long, they weren't really rock solid. There you go. But yeah, I do like a lot of the shots. There is some really good shots in this movie.
Mm. Yeah, agreed.
We'll move on then to the score. And obviously last week we did Shazam. Some of my main complaints was obviously though
Yeah.
the normal like proper like music you get on the radio and whatnot was cool. It was let down by this very generic, not so great score that covered like the fight scenes and everything like that. But this obviously has like a normal score and obviously the music for you to hear on the radio and whatnot. And I think it merged it very well. I think it actually used it very well because obviously it's spread out, so it's not like all constantly this music. Obviously, you get a bit early on, obviously when he's driving away from the cops and whatnot. Then you get a bit, say, for example, for the montage when they're in the hand clap montage, and then you got the unstoppable bit at the end. Or the 21st, sorry, but it's like 21st century. Yeah, that bit. It knows when to spread it out, it knows when to put it in the right moments. And I like the bits of score in between the normal score, because it feels updated version of sort of Power Rangers, which there is actually the theme song in there, updated version of it, which I really liked, especially that scene itself. It was really cool, even though Billy was going backwards, which I did 100% like. I would have preferred if he was serious going straight, but then again, Billy's comic relief, so probably would go backwards. But yeah, I like the score for this. I do actually very much enjoy. I believe it's Brian Tyler who did the score for this.
Yeah.
I think. Where's my phone?
Mm.
I got it on my phone. The score. Go on, talk.
Well, I do have to like the music because obviously some of it can be quite tense at moments, but there's some definite like intent, like intensity to it, and obviously the callback to the original theme was definitely a really good choice. Like if they never had that, like even you would have complained.
Yeah, you have at least. I would say even if it's just in the end credits, I would have liked it.
Yeah.
You need that callback. Look at the Scooby Doo films. I'm pretty certain they used the Scooby Doo theme at some point, didn't they?
Yes.
There's Dora that used the Dora theme song at some point.
Scooby Doo one is when he in the first one. I can't remember when they did it in the first one, but I know in the second one they did it when he fought the big blob guy. Scooby was on the fire extinguisher.
Yeah, I remember.
And obviously in the first one they do a joke of a lot in the cartoons they use that power of voodoo
Yeah.
song a lot. They use that in the first one as well.
Even for example, like a straight for TV movie, the Ben 10 movie, that had the opening. That had the opening for the actual theme, like a heavy rock version of it. But even the TV movie utilized it, and so obviously they had to utilize the theme, and it is Brian Tyler. I just checked, and it is a good score. I do enjoy it. I enjoy the normal music on top of it as well, as I say. I like the hand clap song. I really like that song. It fitted well for the actual training montage.
Yeah.
And I like the Unstoppable song at the end when he's putting the sword down. He's like, I'll be back for it. It's like, we can be heroes, which obviously they can be heroes if they work together. So
Because they're fighting this like inner turmoil of are we really heroes? Because see, they've got their dark side, but they've proven that they can be heroes, and like that.
exactly.
The music fits
Yeah,
what
the
goes on.
music fits exactly. That was my main complaint with Shazam. But obviously, a lot of the other aspects of that movie is what made me give it as high as I did. But there's some aspects in this that drag this a bit more down. That was my main complaint with that movie was the music. Obviously, there's a few other complaints with this is what drags it down for me.
Yeah.
But we'll move on into the special effects. And I'm going to start with the negatives of the special effects here. Goldar. Goldar looks shit. Not just the special effects, the design of Goldar looks shit. I don't like the idea of him just being this massive liquidy giant monster. I like the aspect of the show. He's literally like this weird wolf in an armor, essentially, with massive fuck off wings and a sword. And I believe he's not. It's the skull creature that's related to Rita. But I like that aspect of the show. I like the look of the show. And I said to you, I really wish they would have done a more serious rendition of this. Like, made him look, obviously, fit in with the movie. But obviously, for the aspects of the movie, it made sense for him being this gold monster. Because she's like, oh, I need my Goldar. He's literally, I need gold to make him. That made sense. But I think this CGI is one thing that makes it look bad at times. The moving of the liquid, it just doesn't look well at all. I think it was a stable liquid, would look better, but I still hate the design. But it's the moving part that does it. And the bit, Joe, when they have those weird visions when Rita keeps obviously getting into the heads and the whole stone people disappear. I think they looked a bit weird.
Yeah.
They looked a bit iffy, basically. But other than those two aspects, I really like the rest of the CGI. I think the Zords look incredible. I think the transformation into the suits looks fucking amazing. Zordon looks good. Alpha looks good.
But one Zoid looks good.
Yeah, the Mastodon, because what the fuck's he got extra legs?
Why is it? It looks like a Mastodon.
Yeah, it doesn't even look like a Mastodon. So, other than those little aspects, I do like a lot of the CGI in this film. I think everything else hits. It's just those few aspects is what makes it me go.
Yeah, it's like what they set out to do was good. I think this is
execution.
If they'd executed like certain bits different,
Or just 66.
It'd been perfect. Yeah, it'd been perfect. It's just those things let it down. But story-wise and character-wise, it shines. It's powerful, like the characters are. It's just the certain decisions ruin it.
Yeah, agreed. Hands down, agree. Okay, talking to something that's lacking at times. Action sequences. There's only really two action sequences in the movie. So there's training montage, which I wouldn't really call action. It was more meant to be like just a fun moment. And in the final battle, and though I do like the final battle, I think there's a lot of really cool moments within this. There's a lot of humour in it. Obviously, the Bumblebee joke, the Yippee-ki-yay mother's good. Stuff like those sort of moments. Obviously, then the cinematic moment when they all fall into the pit, when they're all having this heartwarming moment, like, we're not going to let go of each other, we're going to hold on until the very end. Hold it, and they do, obviously they do, and obviously they get pushed into it. And there's that whole moment with Jason when he puts his hand on the glass because Kimberly did it on her Zord, and they all fall in. And then, obviously, they come out as the big Megazord for this movie. Though, it's weird the fact that Goldar's head design is like the spikes on his head look the exact same as the Megazord spikes. It's a bit weird. But then again, maybe she would design it similar to the Megazord for the fact that she obviously was a Ranger. But I'm very interested to see where they would have gone with the Dragon Zord, because that would have been interesting if it was executed right. But yeah, I think the final battle was fun. It's action packed. Obviously, the moment when he's actually out the moments when they're out the suits. Obviously, before the actual Zord bit, they're fighting about the suits, which is a really cool fight. And then there's the little bit when Jason gets out the suit, the Zord to save his dad, and he has to do this massive kicks to take out two hard putties. It's a mouthful to say. But as an overall end like fight for a movie, I think it nails every aspect it should and had to. And for the fact that he didn't have any fighting throughout the entire movie, it had to get everything right within this final battle, and I feel like it did. And obviously, there's a little callback when he bitch slaps fucking Rita into space. Obviously, that's a callback to the bully when he bitch slapped the bully. So it's a good final battle.
Definitely. I mean, I know that like they said you would have preferred more action.
It's a little bit more, a bit early on, like a little scene early on.
But I think there was enough to like placate the fact that they are still Power Rangers, they still fight stuff, but obviously they wanted more time for the characters themselves to build them up as people rather than as generic like army people, generic like coloured army people, which is pretty much when you dull down that is basically Power Rangers. Each one slightly like the same kind of character, but with a few differences. There's always very similarities between each one. But obviously in this one it's realistic people. And the action, I thought it was quite fun. Like I liked because obviously it wasn't going to be that like show offy over the top ninja style fighting because they are inexperienced. But they're pretty much with the power of friendship they managed to defeat her. Just like My Little Pony.
See, that's the thing though. I think it's because they waited way too long in the film, because literally the fighting was the last act of the movie. They waited way too long before they introduced any sort of combat, which obviously is one thing that probably drew people away, because they're waiting for like at least, like for example, a Marvel film, there's always at least one like midway fight scene or something. Whereas this is literally that little bit of the dock, then the bit when they're suited up, and then the big final Zord battle. It was all in the last, what was it, say half hour, something like that, or based within this final half hour, which obviously people going into it, they at least expect to say maybe something like a bit early on. So maybe it took them about an hour to even get the stones. I think I remember correctly looking at the time, because I accidentally knocked my mouse, and it was like 45 minutes ish before they even got the stones. So it was quite late into the movie. But it would have been cool. They obviously Rita hadn't come like then. It would have been cool. Obviously, if she like put like some sort of safeguard in case the stones were caught, like picked up. Like the putty appeared at knowing they're getting chased by the cops.
Yeah.
If the putty appeared then and like tried to get them, and then after this little fight got beat up, and then ran into the car and whatnot, and had that chase sequence, that would have been interesting. But obviously, for what we got fighting wise, it nailed the fight and just needed that little bit more early on. But I do like the fact there's the little cameos in the final battle at the end of Tommy and Kimberly, obviously Jason Taylor Frank and Amy Taylor Johnson, I believe it is. Amy Jo Johnson, sorry. I don't know why I said Taylor. Zach Taylor. But yeah, I like the final battle.
It was fun.
Oh, if you can't tell by me sitting back, Hayden, you know what time it is.
Oh, what time is it? I know it's
Hayden's
5:46.
Quite exact, but no, it's Hayden's editing seconds.
Let's see how long this lasts.
You always find something last second and drag it out for like 2 minutes.
Oh. Well, to be honest, there's not really much to say because there's no real like major editing to it. It's just generic classic editing. And the only thing that you could counter it is the dream sequence of them all like imagining what happened, and that's it. That's pretty much it, really. That's the only like different bits they put in. It's not like fucking Zack Snyder's Justice League. There's not like drastic things that change. Pretty much what you could say is because they choose a specific music and lighting, it makes it more darker, making it more of a serious tone than a glowing golden look at us, we're Captain America people. So yeah, that's it. Done and dusted. Well done. Let's see how long this section lasts in this.
Okay, we'll move on then to the pacing of the movie. And for what it aims for, the pacing is spot on because obviously it builds up your characters. It builds up to this final battle. So it doesn't obviously. It's not like your sort of normal Power Ranger style thing of it's constant battles throughout. It just builds up to this end battle. So it builds up your characters. It builds up them getting the power, having to learn the power. It's also slightly building up your enemy within that before then obviously building up your obviously to your final battle, which then you execute and then the aftermath and whatnot. It does that perfectly. So obviously, as I said, one more action sequence a bit earlier on would have done me even better. For what the pacing wise, it worked out to build up to that final battle as the sort of main moment they become Rangers essentially.
Hey, yeah. And I also like. I think a thing that I like about all of the Rangers themselves, like their design, I think about them is just it looks sleek and good and just very different to the classic spandex. You know, it's like during Marvel, how they redesigned stuff, they redesigned Hawkeye,
Yeah.
they redesigned all this stuff to make it more realistic and feel like they would exist in this world. That's what this does. Also, I think I remembered the time they actually used that sword. It's when he was going for his dad. He used it against two of the Rock Boys.
He does like some jump kicks on them.
Oh, I remember he used a sword on one of them, at least, the Rock guys, and it appeared like Iron Man's armor. That's what I remember it.
I think that was
Yeah.
in the main when they jump out the water. 'Cause he jumps over the
Yeah,
one and the sword appears on his arm.
that's it. Yeah, 'cause I remember it like it was a lot like Iron Man's armor. That's what I might remember it. It's basically Iron Man armor from Infinity War. That is basically what this armor is.
Basically, yeah.
I was expecting loads of those fucking like things to pop out a massive laser beam that he does.
You basically some of the production design, the thoughts there.
There you go.
We'll still move on to that subject.
Iron Man. But yeah.
I like the base. I like the fact that it's like a massive underground like ship. Because obviously in the old one, it was more just like it was just essentially it was just part of a cliff. It was underground, but it was all part of a cliff. Like it was just like, it's massive in the middle of a desert sort of situation. Whereas this is literally under their town. I like the look of the ship. Obviously, Zordon in the wall that moves around works perfectly. Obviously, as I said, the armors look really cool and sleek. Try and not knock everything off when I'm just. Ooh. Oh, I saw that moving then. The armor looks really sleek and really cool, really up to date. I'm going to try and not knock it over again. Oh, that was close. But yeah, and obviously Rita's armor is more up to date, more like a actual Green Ranger armor, just obviously a bad guy version. I like basically like the look of basically it's this normal town. It's not like this big massive city. It's just literally this normal town. So I like that they went for that aspect, which obviously is what the show essentially was. And I like the fact there's references. They've got
bigger Krispy Kremes then.
Yeah, then we have. Yeah. And I also like the fact there's a little subtle references, as I said, afterwards of the name drops when the dad's driving and he's like, Reefside and Pearl Bay, I think he said, or something like that, which is obviously references to actual towns from the actual universe. So I like the fact that they subtly put them in there. So, but yeah, production design overall, I think spot
on. Definitely, it feels like they are in this world. Definitely. You know, as I've been saying, the armor looks alien, but also looks like it's been influenced by the time that they crashed, and except for the Mastodon, we don't talk about that bit.
Agreed.
It's like a fucking spider boy.
Yeah. Okay. We'll move on then to the script. I'm surprised I even held that. Yeah. I like this. Obviously, the script is saw a lot more as usual by the actors, as it always is, and as you stated, obviously the old ones have both stated. Obviously, the dialogue a lot of times, and even the new ones of the show, a lot of times it's cheesy dialogue. It's clunky as hell. Whereas this is more serious toned. Though there is some like cheesy lines at times, especially with Rita. She's more
Mm.
over the top sort of cheesy than just like your generic sort of cheesiness.
Yeah,
But
we got real well. She's alien.
exactly, so you
Yeah,
won't know like
yeah.
a lot of stuff.
The common notice. She acts very alien, over the top nature comes from her from like her species or where she's from, the culture that her species has. Whereas we have the more realistic, like kids who are obviously dealing with shit and definitely angry with the world but want to protect it at the same time.
Yeah, I think their dialogue is a lot. It's a more serious in nature, and it feels more realistic at
Very,
times.
very heavy.
Yeah, it feels realistic. I would say,
Hmm.
which they
Definitely.
had to for the fact that the subjects they're going for, they had to make sure what they're saying is realistic at times.
Oh,
And
yeah,
obviously,
definitely.
yeah, you still have to. And obviously, I feel like they nailed that, and also I still feel like they nailed some of the obviously the humor in terms of Billy, how he obviously I say he's more heart, so he's got to get the humor here. Like, are we more Iron Man or Spider Man? He's got to get that sort of like nerdy humor in, and it's not
Yeah,
like really forced. It's like sort of naturally comes.
yeah, because because of being autistic, these are things that would pop in his head, and he'd want to explain. He wants to understand the world, understand. So, what is the situation? With this, like, it feels like this is what the actor character would say, not like what the studio thinks. Let's say this and reference this. Look, we're referencing pop culture. Like us. It's more of the character would actually say this. It's like the um Spider-Man in Homecoming and stuff. He's a big fucking Star Wars nerd. There's the scene where they're playing with like a Lego Star Wars. Like what you do, look at your background.
I mean,
It
a
yeah
big bullet there.
yeah it feels realistic, like the real characters, and this feels like as well. They all feel like real characters have their own little niches and stuff that make them them. It's good. Good.
Thumbs up. Okay, we'll move on to the ending of the movie. So the ending is obviously, the day saved as you usually have it. Heroes go back to normal. Still remain friends and still have obviously the desire to protect the city when it's required. And
Mhm.
obviously it's more obviously a generic sort of ending of a movie, like, oh, we've won, yay. But I like the fact obviously they go back to normal. They're not sticking fully rein as the Power Rangers. This obviously as they're doing the show in the normal episodes. I like the fact they're going back to their normal lives with still the aspect of, we know the power's there. When we need it again, we'll come for it and we will save the day again. I like that aspect of the ending. So
Yeah,
it reminds me sort of like the actual shows where they end. Obviously, not to say that the first like few series, because the first few series obviously followed on into the next show. But I mean, like the ones that are like sort of one shot series, they usually end with them basically just going their separate ways, or maybe sticking around to save the day more. So I like the fact that these are literally, essentially still are school kids. They literally
yeah,
need to go back to school, and they've gone back to school, and they've all become friends. So they're all going to bond even more at school. And as I say, if Zordon's like, we have a new threat arriving. Alpha, Rita's come back. Ah, oh, ay, 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 ay. We'll get him again. Ay, 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 ay. It's that sort of thing. I like the fact that obviously they still have that knowledge of, we'll go back, because as you said, Jason, when he puts his sword down, he's like, I'll be back for it. So that's the aspect of they'll be back,
but it's
which sadly they're
bittersweet there
not.
because it's bittersweet because
Yeah,
like they're not actually come back, but in our own head canon we can imagine that they do. And if there's like a big moment, they would come back. It's like the ending of Avengers. Obviously, ending of Avengers Assemble. They obviously end of like they'll come back when we need them to because they have to, and that sort of kind of thing. And they're all going separate ways. And the Nick Fury is commenting to Hill about how they'll be back, even though Thor is back in Asgard and Tony's. They're all going their separate way.
yeah.
They're going to come back, and when we need them, there's that kind of feeling to it. More like more human in the sense of they're all.
Yeah, the same sort of aspect could be said for Snyder's Justice League, or even the
Yeah.
normal Justice League. Essentially, they both end with this idea of, if we need us, we'll be back.
Mm,
That's I get what you're saying.
yeah.
Obviously, it's just bittersweet that it's not going to happen.
Mm.
Sadly,
We can imagine
yeah,
it.
we can
Like
just imagine it.
I can imagine you sitting in your room now and coming up with those fanfics about what happens with them.
Hiya, me. Okay, well then move on. We'll have a quick note. Obviously, there's an end credit scene after the, I got the power. Yeah, the power song. I don't think it come through fully then, but oh well. But obviously, there's the whole Tommy Oliver little reference where they're all in detention. There's a jacket on there. It's like, oh, you got a new student, Tommy Oliver. Keeps repeating, the guy's not there, or girl, because I think the cast wanted a girl at one point.
Hmm.
A lot of the cast
Obviously,
wanted them to
Tommy
change it.
could be like a gender neutral name.
There's a lot of aspects of people. Obviously, I think it was the cast. Obviously, were calling for him to be turned to female. Obviously, either way, we never got either version. Obviously, there's a lot of joke of Billy blowing up his fucking locker again for the second time. But yeah, I like the little reference. But again, I say it's just bittersweet that nothing's coming from it.
Yeah, but you could do some fan cast. You can choose who you want to be, and
yeah, we can dream.
Yeah, fill it in your head, basically.
Yeah, basically. Okay, we'll move on quickly before the ratings and then move on to your favourite moment of the movie. There's a few moments in this movie that I really did like. Obviously, as I said, the first time they suit up when they're all walking up, that's really cool. The Zord comes up, that's really cool. A lot of the bonding between them is really cool. But the one that sticks in my mind massively, a lot of time it's because of the acting and the music and the cinematography of the scene in general and how impactful it is Billy's death. I really like Billy's death in this movie. It's a scene that massively stood out when first watching it, because obviously when re-watching it, you know, oh, he's going to come back, it's fine and whatever. But when watching it for the first time, I was actually like, wait, did they just kill someone off? Obviously, the comics now, they fucking do it anyway, left, right and centre. But I mean, at the time of watching, I was like, they kill him off. And that scene obviously stuck in my head constantly. And it stuck in my head throughout multiple viewings, and especially this viewing. And I've gone, this is literally, though it's obviously not the action scene, it's not them fully suit, it's a character-driven moment, and it really sticks with me. So Billy's death, hands down, is my favourite moment. And the Stand By Me fucking song on top of that makes it even better. I love that scene.
I think for me, it would be the scene when they're all over the campfire talking. That might seem very cliche, but it's like we learn a lot about the characters and the struggles they go through, and you can see how it affects them, like the way they say it, and like the fact that Kimberly just doesn't want to reveal what she did because she's still ashamed of it. It shows she's ashamed of what happened, and obviously each one of them has that little like reaction. It's something that they all need. They all needed to like bond, and they all had something they want to talk about, but had no one to talk about too. And this gave them that. So that in a way is a lot for me, because that helps to set up more the impact for them of Billy's death.
Okay, it's basically our favourite moments literally flow into each other, basically.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah, we do good choices. Okay, pivotal moment. It is time for our ratings, and Alex didn't actually send me a reasoning behind his rating, so we're going to skip his.
Yeah.
He said if he didn't send his reasoning behind his one, then I'd just skip it. And I'm just going to skip it. So okay, so obviously, as I said, there's a lot of aspects to this that I love, and the legacy of the franchise is why I hold this film even higher, because I've been a big fan for a long time, and there's just a lot I love about the small bit of action we had. I liked the music, I liked the cinematography, I liked the acting, I liked the cast, I fucking loved. The dark tone, I really liked. All these things make it really good, but the Goldar stuff lets it down for me slightly. I really was upset that they fucked up Goldar so much. Though obviously, as I say, for the pacing of wise, the less action made sense. I still feel like it needs that little bit of extra, that little bit of more there early on, just to tease you into it. A bit more explaining some parts would have been nice. And he said the bittersweet. It's a bit like with you just Slee. You can't give it a 10 because you don't know. Your mind's like, there's no more to this.
It affects it.
Yeah. And though I'm nostalgic with Power Rangers, I'm not going to be like Alex and go, oh, this movie's amazing, or you with Scooby-Doo.
No,
I'm not going to be like you two. So I'm going to give this, Saban's Power Rangers, I'm going to give a sort of 8 out of 10.
Yeah,
It's a strong high 8 for me though. I did really enjoy it, but obviously the bittersweetness of no sequel or no continuation, and those few things, especially Goldar, really fucking grind me down a bit.
I agree. I'd say 8 as well because even though I never saw this character, God, obviously I didn't know he existed. I just thought it was a generic, like, random character that was just like, this is a construct that I've created, like the Rock guys. It just seemed very like emotionless, empty kind of creature. So I didn't know it was a proper character, but obviously I love the human aspect to it. The character has always been my favorite part of it. It's just the designs for some stuff which kind of affects it. So yeah, the eight's probably what I'd give it to. Because I didn't really grow up with parents. I never watched Wild Force and Dino Thunder. They're only ones I ever watched. So I wasn't as invested as like you were. Because obviously, I preferred more Ben 10, as you will know, and I will constantly say. I grew. That's what I had. That was my thing. But I still enjoyed this film. So when we get to the Ben 10 film, be ready for some massive bias. Massive. I'm
Okay.
gonna glance over all the problems. It's gonna be
There's a
perfect.
lot of problems in those movies, but okay, yeah, that gives a very simple rating here. Then, so that gives Saban's Power Rangers a Chattercave overall rating of 8 out of 10.
Wait, we didn't ask James what he thought. James, what do you think, James? What's that, James? Oh, you're a bitch. Oh, okay. Can't say that. This is family friendly.
Okay, we'll quickly get the Chattercave MVP award, and we both straight up agree the Chattercave MVP this week is Billy Cranston, the Blue Ranger, played by RJ Cyler, just for the fact that he was the heart and soul of this movie, and he was acted well. The character didn't come off as annoying. It came off as literally another one of the many of the characters that are struggling with something in their lives, and obviously they could have milked the whole disability a lot more and just made that even more an aspect. A bit like what Predator did with the kid in that, the fully milked like, oh, the Predator's here because he's like the next evolutionary chain because his disease is what makes him the next like better than everyone sort of thing. They could have milked something like that so much like that film, but I'm glad they didn't, and it worked so well. And RJ Cyler did a really good job.
Yeah, I liked how it was very. It's something the character has, but it's not the character. It's like all of them. They aren't like what makes them unique. Isn't their main character? Like even like obviously Yellow Ranger, her aspect of it is she's gay, but it's not the main part of the character. It's what like a lot of people who try to be like, oh look how diverse we are and modern, but they tend to make that aspect all the characters about, which can trivialize what it is, and it makes it more of seem like a fashion piece than what is real life. And this does make it feel like a real living characters with real living problems, and there's more than just that they have to deal with. Because she's not just that, but it's also she feels isolated from her family, and they focus on more on that side of it, and it's really good. So yeah, yay!
And runner-up this week is Jason Scott, the Red Ranger, Dacre Montgomery, because he does a really good job at leading the team, being obviously the front and center of the movie. And
Yeah,
obviously, as you say, Billy is the heart and soul. He's the one that sort of is there to bring them even more together. In fact, like,
mm-hmm.
Kimberly is the one who confesses her secrets to him. He's the backbone. Essentially, obviously he's the head of the team. He's the face of the team.
The
Obviously,
Rock.
yeah, he's the rock of the team. Obviously, Cranston is more the backbone, the spine of the team, the heart and soul. You know, the body of the team essentially. But
Mm.
other than that, I do think his portrayal of Jason Scott is a different version to what we had in the old 90s one, for the fact that he was more like a martial artist in that, whereas this one he's a football player, so it's more modernised, and
Yeah,
I think he does the aspect very well. And it's humorous that we gave the MVP to a character called Billy, and he played a character called Billy in Stranger Things.
yes, definitely. Because his character strummed him to Billy and Stranger Things, and that is basically a dick. He gets infected by a big your alternate universe parasite, and they become a serial killer. And he basically physically abuses his ginger stepsister.
Basically. Well, so this is obviously his first. This is his first major role.
Yeah,
Obviously, he
guy.
did. And obviously his first like movie. Though obviously, better watch out. It was his first one he filmed. Obviously, it said that came out. Eventually came out after this movie. So this was his first like cinema-worthy movie. He does a good job.
Yeah. Fine.
We'll move on to the question of the day, and I've just changed it mid like mindset for my actually had.
Because I've already answered it.
Yeah, you already answered the fact that you definitely want to see more of this, even though it's never going to happen. One thing, obviously, I found interesting, which I spoke about earlier, was obviously my idea is maybe they were going to like adapt all the other shows, that they were going to slowly flow into those ones. Would you have liked to have seen that? And obviously, with this darker tone, like them slowly like build up, say, from Mighty Morphin into Zeo, which is the follow-up series, to Turbo, to Space, and so on and so forth, like build up into these like, and then obviously span out the universe even more. Like, maybe they could carry on a bit like with Marvel ones. They can carry on with this team, but then they could also span out and do other teams like the Dino Thunder, the Wild Force, Lost Galaxy, stuff like that. Span out like that. So would you have liked to have seen that sort of massive cinematic universe with this darker tone?
Definitely, because obviously, because I watched Wild Force as a kid and Dino Thunder, I'd like to see them specifically, and it'd be also quite fun to see the other ones, because I never watched Mighty Morphin, but I enjoyed this. So imagine I'd like the other ones. And I think if they can make what was very quite cheesy thing really good, they probably could have made even some of the cringy ones look really fucking great. And even if they're like, they'd be all probably more modern looking, and everything would have looked probably more real. And it would be nice to see how they did Wild Force, because obviously I remember like the fucking animals and stuff. All of them seemed very quite, because that was quite a dark kind of
that it was dark era.
series. Yeah, because obviously they had that whole like the special one, which was obviously the Wolf Boy goes around basically stealing their Zoids.
Zoids?
Yeah,
Zords. Zoidbergs.
He stole their Zoidbergs, and was he using them against him?
Yeah, he was using them against them.
Yeah, like that's quite dark for a kid. Because imagine like you grew up with these like big machines being like your characters one, or that's my favorite one, and all that, and then seeing probably been your favorite, like the lion basically ripping apart you. And I mean,
Yeah,
seeing,
I get what you're saying.
Yeah, like it's probably quite traumatic. It would nice to see that, like the more realistic side, and especially that's like that special. If that was dark then, can you imagine how fucking dark they'd make it now?
Exactly.
Oh my god! And especially when you realise the redemption as well from the Black Wolf,
yeah.
White Wolf, just totally not racist.
Okay, I think you covered my question. Very good there.
Yeah.
Obviously, one thing I want to quickly give a note about. We did like stuff that's old, mainly like Jaws and Shining. We spoke about the legacy of those films. Obviously, the legacy of this series in general. I want to talk about, but the fact that this show started in 1994, May 23rd to be exact. No, sorry. 93. Ignore me. I read the fucking last aired part. It first aired August 28th, 1993. And obviously, it was based on. I'm going to try and pronounce this. Kyoryu Sentai Zyuranger, which, of course, obviously is the Japanese counterpart, which itself started in 1975. Power Rangers has been around since 1975, but it wasn't adapted into. Yeah, it wasn't adapted into English until the 90s, which thanks to Saban, who found it when he was over in Japan. And there's a very interesting documentary on Netflix that I recommend watching. It's like each episode focuses on like different like toy lines, like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Transform. Each talks about those like the legacy and where they came from and stuff like that. And there's one dedicated to Power Rangers, which is a very interesting like talk from Saban of how he found it. He literally got laughed at the room when he first brought it to the studio. He was like, I want to make this into a TV show. And they basically just laughed him at the room. And eventually he got the backing of someone and they made this massive franchise. And obviously, there's the book that's been behind me this entire time, which basically talks about like every series, and it goes up till it has a little bit on Beast Morphers, which was the last series before Dino Fury, which is the current series there in America. But it obviously covers a bit of the movie as well, and you can get that on Amazon for like £22. It's not that expensive, and it's a big book. It's a nice book. It's got a lot in it, and it's just something that's grown over the years into this even bigger franchise. Obviously, when it first came out, obviously everyone was enjoying it. Everyone was loving it. Obviously, it had controversy because it was violent. Obviously, the fighting and whatnot.
Yeah.
Like, oh, no violence. The shit stuff like that.
Fucking violent.
Yeah, it wasn't really that violent.
Nah, some people can react quite heavily.
And obviously then it spanned over the years up until obviously this year now, where I was to say Dino Fury, which is the current series, which is based on Resolja, which is what I'm wearing on my wrist currently. And obviously it's had this legacy. It's had this massive legacy thanks to Super Sentai, which which is still going strong today. It's in like I believe it's. Let's have a look. It's currently in its. I think this series now is its 45th series, whereas in America they're only on 28. But the thing is, the difference is in terms of America. Obviously, the first 3 series are Mighty Morphin. Obviously, they did it split into 3 series, though they obviously adapted the different like sort of types of ones. So obviously the first series was Zoo Ranger, then it was Die Ranger, then Kaku Ranger. They adapted those sort of ones, but still kept it Mighty Morphin. But the latest series from when Saban retook it over, because obviously Saban had it originally, then Disney brought the rights. That was I believe Ninja Storm was the first one with Disney. Because obviously the first like so many series was filmed in America, then they just basically filmed in New Zealand from then on. And obviously Disney had the rights, and then Saban brought the rights back, and then for some reason he just started doing like 2 series of the same show. So, like for example, Samurai, and then he put the word super in front of Samurai, and he kept doing that for fucking ages. And it was so annoying. He kept putting super in front of everything or within the word, and everyone got annoyed with that. But then obviously Hasbro's bought the rights now, and obviously they went back in the arsenal. They didn't obviously adapt. That's the thing. A lot of times they adapt like the most recent series, but Hasbro went back and adapted Go Busters, which is basically essentially was a homage series to America. For the fact that it was based on spies. They literally based the whole show on America and the spies and whatnot, the spy movies and shit. And then obviously Hasbro went back and went, oh yes, let's make this. Let's not make the new series. Let's go back and make this. Obviously they're doing the fucking new series in the sense of Dino Fury is based on the last like 2 series ago. But still, it's had this massive impact. Obviously you said the toy lines, for example. I'm just going to grab like loads. I'm going to dread grabbing this big fucker. These are the Japanese counterparts. They're much better toys, I will say. Fucking shit. For example, that. He's missing his legs. If I picked him up, his legs would have fell off, so I took them off already. This is based on fucking Looping Ranger, Pat Ranger, which is Cops and Robbers. They're literally the series. Japan literally the series based on Police versus Thieves, which I'm hoping they eventually adapt to America. But even like the American toys, for example. So these aren't toys; these are coins. These are die-cast coins based on the movie, the first movie they made. But these are the animal versions of what they had, because obviously in the first movie they lost their dino powers and had to go to animals. So you got an ape, frog, bear, wolf, and a crane. I'm just missing the White Rangers. Actually, yeah, the White Rangers are missing his.
The strangest of all creatures, frogs.
That's the joke. It's literally a joke. The guy's like, I'm a frog. And the whole joke is, the frog, the prince and the frog, you give it a good kiss, he's a prince, and he's like, oh, I'm happy now. But I mean, obviously, Hasbro gone back in the arsenal and started doing what's called Lightning Collection, which is like these figures based on characters, and they did like different waves of them. They've even done like a big, massive Megazord toy like these, which are quite cool. And not even like toys though. I've dropped it. Obviously, you got the sort of the collectible like role play shit like this, for example, which would light up, but there's no batteries in it. This big bad boy, another one. These are pre-Hasbro. These two are though. These are Legacy Collection, I believe these are. These are literally before Hasbro got the rights, so they're probably end up remaking these shit. But still, even those shit was really cool. And there's even board games. There's even fucking tabletop board games on them.
Yeah, let's be honest. The entire franchise was designed specifically for
merchandise. Heck, there's a comic book line of them now.
So I think like sometimes like
which you
the
got me into, by
design
the
of
way.
stuff. Sometimes the design of stuff can really ruin the like because if they we're making it specific for toys, it can ruin designs. Like the reboot Ben 10, all
Yeah,
of them, all of the aliens are humanoids because it's easy to sell toys. Because it's
yeah,
easy to like, oh, got the same cast, we can just change slightly, and that ruins the like feeling of the characters. They all just feel like we're here for money. Whereas the original, like an alien, like the original OG series, think of like Wildvine, how
yeah,
different that looked, and Stinkfly. All of them looked unique and different. And what I like about Power Rangers, sometimes like the original series, a lot of them looked like they weren't just for toys. It was like the design was more
yeah,
like robust, and then you show me some of the other ones, which were basically just that's the toy.
yeah. Basically,
I think older it was, the less like soulless it was.
that's what I mean.
You know?
Obviously, because that's the thing. Obviously, as I say, adapted into comics eventually, and up till like I think it was like the 25th issue or something. It followed a lot of an up to date rendition of Mighty Morphin, but it also introduced new characters like he's a bit off camera. I'm knocking everything. I'm not going to touch anything. Lord Draken, which is the guy holding the mask, which is an evil version of the Green Ranger. He's a full on evil guy that kills people. Heck, literally within this comic, I don't know where it is in the comic, but I don't know if you can see that. Uh,
Yeah,
he literally stabs the Green Ranger in the back of an alleyway. He literally teleports down and stabs him in the back and kills him.
this basically comic is what the film is about.
Yeah,
It's for those who grew up with it, but are now old enough to watch the more graphic stuff.
exactly. And obviously, eventually, it goes into like, this massive like fight
Mm.
with all like the good guys, like every single generation, like teaming up to fight Lord Draken and stop him. And obviously, even when that line finished, they carried
Mm.
on. They've finished now because they've rebooted the comics and whatnot. But I mean, the Boom comics eventually they gave other characters shots that wouldn't normally get the main shots. Like for example, on this cover here, you got the Magna Defender, which was obviously the guy, one from Lost Galaxy, which I showed you yesterday. He got his shot. The Samurai Ranger from fucking Ninja Storm, he got his shot. It was all led
Mm.
by the Red Ranger from In Space. One that wasn't even in the show got a shot. He was in. He was meant to be. He was in basically counterpart of Dino Charge. He's
Yeah,
basically a bad guy in Dino Charge in the Japanese version in the movie. He was a bad guy, and he was a character that people kept saying, "Oh, he should be him," and they never did. But then the comics happened, and they adapted him into that character, and they made him a good guy, but he still had the tainted legacy from what he did in Dino Charge when he was a bad guy. And obviously, then you got the Ranger Slayer, which is a rendition of Kimberly when she worked for Draken, but then turned against him. And obviously, you got Zeo Yellow. It eventually, it even like made like new characters, like just specifically for the comic books.
mm.
So I really like that, and obviously I'm just trying to get through the comics here. I've got like a massive pile for the explanation. They even like gave one shot stories for like characters that we love and grew up with. So like Tommy got his own Logan style one, which I told you about before, which is really fucking good.
Yeah.
They even adapted one for In Space with the Psycho Rangers, where they brought the green a green one into it, and they did a full story about that. Which wasn't as good as the Tommy one, but it was alright. They've done a Time Force one about the two of the most famous and favourite Power Rangers of all time. And then not even like the solo ones that did crossovers. They got Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They got Justice League. It's such a fucking massive legacy, and for something
Yeah.
that's based on this really cheesy show, it's surprising, and I'm happy it has lasted this fucking long.
Yeah, and there's definitely a lot of adult stuff you could like put to it. It doesn't have to be all kiddie
Yeah,
friendly.
like the comics, for example.
Yeah, the comics and this film, it can be dark for the kids who grew up with it, but are now old enough that they'll be more entertained by this kind of stuff.
Exactly. Heck, there's the video
Real.
games. There's that old video game it used to be on. I remember I played on DS, I think, at one point, where like, basically there's like multiple different like ranges. It was like a story based one. You could choose different ranges, and it went through them. It was like so it's different ones per console, I think. You got the fighting one, which is basically like Mortal Kombat but less brutal, which is the one that's like, they keep adding to now. What was the other one they had? My mind's like trying to work Overdrive here, trying to no pun intended because there's a show called Overdrive, which was really bad. Just trying to fucking think. But you get my point. It's obviously from this little show, based on a Japanese show. The amount of things I got from it is like the comic books, the games, the toy lines. They've spanned movies. They span loads, and I'm happy it has. And hopefully we get some more dark stuff in terms of live action, because I want to see more dark stuff.
Definitely. I mean, like, obviously, it inspired you as well for stuff.
Exactly. I've literally wrote my own dark version of this show, but not this show.
Not as much of a rip-off.
It has its moments when you can clearly tell it's Power Rangers, but then again, there's fucking that many adaptations of this sort of show. Big Bad Beetleborgs, that was literally, though it's Saban, it was literally Power Rangers but with Beetle suits. VR Troopers, again Saban, but you get my point. And there's all these other ones. There's one that Alex showed me recently, but I can't think what it's called. It's like an anime, and you can watch it on YouTube. It's literally free on YouTube, on their YouTube channel, and it's basically Power Rangers. It literally just basically is Power Rangers but anime.
Stuff for that, like, think about how many like copies of Pokemon there are.
Exactly, that's what I mean.
Like, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, Bakugan, Dinosaur King.
Exactly.
Those things are massive, like, basically Pokemon, but not everything is. They're slightly different each one.
Exactly, which is obviously why I've made my own rendition, a much darker version, which I actually wrote the first episode of. We'll say I've written the first one.
Oh,
it's quite dark. But it also has the element of it's essentially just a bunch of people turning into armors and fighting. So it has that element, but it also has the darkness, which I like. I have to show it, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it literally is something that's shaped me, and it's shaped a lot of stuff I write in general. A lot of the stuff I like is thanks to, say, Power Rangers. A lot of the things, the superheroes, I'm really into the superhero genre because of Power Rangers, essentially. It's something that started me off in life, and it's something that I hold close to my heart. I want to hold it with a shuriken.
Yeah, it's like I watched loads of like Spider-Man films, and I did watch some of the animated series, but I never got into like Avengers or any of those kind of Marvel stuff until I watched Ben 10. That got me into it, and when that made me a bit more into like in superhero and stuff. So when I first watched Avengers, like I remember putting the idea in my head, like, what if Ben was an Avenger, and like putting those kind of stuff, and it helps you like when your favorite stuff like similar to other stuff, it can branch your genres and what you watch. And I bet you've probably imagined what it would be like to see fucking Power Rangers against the Marvel or something like that.
Well, I was in Justice League fight them.
Yeah,
and they became best friends.
Yeah, we become best friends.
The Black Ranger literally fights Batman and gets really annoyed with Batman the entire time, and then he's like best friends with him, and then he's like, "Oh, we're friends now."
Velociraptor.
Basically, to sum up the legacy, it's impactful on a lot of scale, on a massive scale, especially for me.
Yeah, it's very personal for you. Definitely.
Yeah, it's something personal, dress sense.
And I'll talk very similar about when we do the Ben 10.
I'll bring up legacy again for them.
That's the thing that I know exactly what I could talk about, because like fan wise, there's so much stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And that sums up this. Literally, I could speak for hours, but I'm not going to, because I'm not making this as long as the fucking 2-hour movie. You know, I might bring some stuff up at some point, because I think I can still talk a lot and be interesting about this sort of passionate, essentially, about this subject.
Yeah.
Who knows? I might do something at some point. That's it for Chat Cave this week. I'm not going to announce any names for any more, because we've been let down that many times. I'm not bothering.
Yeah, Alex. God's sake.
He's anyone that's fucking actually
good
for something.
He actually watched it. He wouldn't even going on.
He wanted to give a rating, but he forgot to send me his reasoning, so I just didn't bother. But it also would have dragged it down, so yeah, fair enough. He gave it a 7, but but next week we're celebrating our 50th podcast.
Yeah,
made to 50. Apart from you, Hayden, that'd be technically your 49th, because you didn't do one division.
Yeah, well,
but if you count the fact before then, I'm doing a double release one day. I'm releasing my normal video, and I'm also releasing the extended version of the BVS one. Technically speaking, then you would be on 50, because you've done 2 versions of that. So technically, it still is your 50th.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to be celebrating our 50th. Obviously, straight away. I believe it's Monday at 7, I believe. I'm releasing the extended version of the BVS talk we did because we went on for fucking like ages with that. I cut about at least like 15-20 minutes worth of stuff out of that. So I thought, fuck it. Said about the 50th, it's going out. It's not going to be canon, but or it might be. That could be the canon version. It's going to be the same number. But either way, the actual celebration of the 50th is going to be Birds of Prey.
Oh yeah.
I'm trying to get as many people on as I can from the previous ones.
Massive fucking cutout that's right behind you.
But until the 50th, or if you're going to be watching the extended version of BVS, which we refer to old. But until then, I've been your host, Drag King Thomas Shoes.
Yes, and this is James.
Hayden. The mighty have fallen again. And it's been a Check Out podcast. Go Power Rangers. Oh, there's no battery in it. Bollocks.
Oh well, pass the cocaine then.
Too late. Woo!